"Sir, can you fix my toy? It was our last gift from Dad." A little girl asked the millionaire at the cafe. Christmas didn't end the way people imagine it does in movies. There were no fireworks, no sudden perfect peace that erased every fear. There was only snow, soft and quiet, and a small apartment where the heater hummed too loudly, because silence still felt dangerous in some homes. Rosie woke up early the day after Christmas, not because she was excited, because her body had learned to wake before hope could be taken away. She patted down the hallway in socks that didn't match. Her stuffed dog was tucked under her arm like a heartbeat. Adrian was already awake. He stood by the window, coffee in hand, looking out at the street. He wasn't dressed like a boardroom man. No tia, no heavy coat, just a dark sweater and tired eyes that were still learning what home meant. Mara watched him from the kitchen doorway. She didn't interrupt. She had learned that men who carried silence like armor needed time to unclip it. Rosie stopped behind him. "Mr. Adrian?" she asked softly. He turned. "Yes." She lifted the toy dog. "He's still okay," she said, checking the seams like a nurse checking bandages. Adrian smiled a little. "He's holding," he promised. Rosie nodded, satisfied. Then she asked the question that always landed deeper than people expected from a child. "Are you holding?" Adrian didn't answer right away. He looked at Mara, then back at Rosie. "I'm learning," he said. Rosie accepted that like it was enough, because to her, learning meant you hadn't given up. The first week after Christmas, Adrian didn't disappear. He didn't return to his glass tower and leave them as a seasonal memory. He showed up in small ways, quiet ways. A grocery bag at the door. Not expensive, not flashy. Just practical things. Milk, bread, oranges, soup. A new latch on the front window that had always rattled when the wind pressed against it. He asked first. He always asked first. Mara noticed that. She had spent years with people who didn't ask. People who took. People who decided her life was something to manage. Adrian didn't manage her. He watched. He listened. And when he helped, it was with hands that didn't demand gratitude. That was why it felt scary. Because when kindness comes without hooks, you start wondering what you'll owe later. And Mara's life had taught her that nothing was ever truly free. On a Saturday morning, the cafe was warmer than usual. Not in temperature, in atmosphere. The barista had started recognizing Rosie. Someone left out a small cup of marshmallows. A woman at the back table smiled when Rosie colored quietly. Adrian and Mara sat by the window. Rosie drew pictures, not just stick figures. She drew details now. A table, a window, a small dog with a stitched ear, a man's hand holding a needle, a woman's hand holding a mug like warmth could spill out of it. She drew what she noticed, and children always notice the truth. "Mara si petea. I'm not used to this," she admitted quietly, eyes on her cup. Adrian didn't pretend not to understand. "Neither am I," he said. Mara gave a small laugh, quick, surprised by itself. "I mean, being seen," she said, without being measured. Adrian looked out at the street, then back to her. "My whole life has been measurement," he admitted. "Profit, growth, reputation. Even grief had a schedule." Mara's eyes softened. "That sounds exhausting," she said. "It was safe," Adrian corrected. A pause. Then he added, as if he'd never said it aloud before. "Safe can be empty." Mara didn't respond with advice. She didn't do what people often do when someone confesses pain. She didn't rush to fix it. She just nodded, as if she understood that some things couldn't be fixed quickly. Not like a toy, but life always tests softness. A few days later, Mara noticed the car again. Not parked right outside this time, just nearby. A little too often, a little too patient. She didn't tell Adrian at first, because fear makes you protective in strange directions. She didn't want him to burn down his whole world for them, and she didn't want Rosie to become a battleground. She told herself she was imagining things. Until Thursday night. It was late. The sky was clear, but the cold bit like teeth. Mara got off her second shift and walked to the bus stop with her scarf pulled tight. The car rolled up slowly, smooth as a thought. A window lowered. A man spoke like he was offering customer service. "Ms. Lane," he said, "you're making things harder than they need to be." Mara stopped walking. Her fingers tightened around her bag. "I said no," she replied. The man smiled faintly. "Your no doesn't erase consequences," he said calmly. "You don't want trouble near your child." Mara's breath caught. The man lifted his phone slightly. Not threatening, just present. "You live in a building where people mind their own business," he said. "That can be inconvenient when you need help." Mara's voice shook, but she didn't step back. "Leave us alone," she said. The man's smile faded. "Tell Mr. Cole to be smart," he said, "or we'll make sure he learns." Then the window rose, and the car moved away like nothing happened. Mara stood frozen in the cold, heart hammering, the city noise suddenly distant. For a long moment, she didn't move. Then she pulled out her phone. She stared at Adrian's name. She didn't want to call, but the truth was she couldn't afford pride. So she called. Adrian answered on the first ring. "Mara," her voice cracked. "They came back," she whispered. There was a pause, not because he didn't understand, but because something inside him switched from silence to steel. "Where are you?" he asked, calm and sharp. "At the bus stop," she said. "Stay there," he replied. "I'm coming." He didn't say it'll be okay. He didn't say don't worry. He didn't offer words. He offered presence. When Adrian arrived, he didn't storm in like a hero in a movie. He just stepped out his car and walked to Mara. He took one look at her face and understood everything. He didn't touch her right away. He didn't assume. He simply stood close enough that the cold air between them felt less aggressive. "Did they threaten Rosie?" he asked quietly. Mara nodded. Adrian's jaw tightened. Not anger like a tantrum, anger like a decision. "I'm done," he said. Mara's eyes widened. "Adrian," she started. He shook his head. "No more warnings," he said. "No more polite conversations." He looked down at her, voice low. "You and Rosie are not bargaining chips." Mara swallowed hard. "I didn't want to drag you into this," she said. Adrian's expression softened for a moment. "You didn't," he replied. "They did." The next morning, Adrian called his lawyer. Not the kind who smiled for cameras. The kind who handled storms quietly. Then he did something that surprised even himself. He went back to the cafe, not to sit, to speak. He sat at his usual table, but he didn't stare out the window. He waited, and when the owner, an older man with kind eyes, came over with coffee, Adrian asked, "Can I use your back room for an hour?" he said. The man blinked. "For what?" Adrian hesitated, then said, "For meeting, not business." The man studied him for a moment. Then he nodded. "Sure," he said. "Whatever you need." Adrian exhaled, because even a simple yes from a stranger still felt like something you had to earn. That afternoon, Adrian met with the people who had sent the men. Not family this time, Not a father figure, not someone he could blame on blood. It was the board, the investors, the reputation managers, people who spoke softly while cutting throats. They sat across from him in a polished room, smiling like this was an intervention. "Adrian," one of them said gently, "you're making emotional decisions." Adrian didn't flinch. "I'm making human decisions," he corrected. Another leaned forward. "You're risking the company," he said. "Your image, your future." Adrian's eyes were cold. "My future," he repeated. He looked around at them. Then he said something he hadn't realized he believed until it left his mouth. "If my future requires me to abandon a child because it's inconvenient, then it isn't a future worth having." Silence. A woman at the end of the table sighed, like Adrian was being dramatic. "You don't have to abandon anyone," she said. "Just step back. Let it cool down." Adrian leaned forward slightly. "No," he said, "because cool down is what people say when they mean disappear quietly." Another voice, sharper. "You're being manipulated," the man said. Adrian's eyes narrowed. "No," he replied. "For the first time in my life, I'm being told the truth." He stood. The chair scraped softly against the floor. "I'm stepping away," he said. A ripple moved through the room. "Adrian," someone began. He raised a hand. "I'll sign whatever documents you want," he said, "but you will not send anyone near them again." He paused, then added, voice deadly calm, "If you do, I will burn this empire down with legal fire, so clean you won't even smell the smoke until it's too late." The room went silent because they heard the truth. Adrian wasn't negotiating. He was choosing. That night, Mara sat in her kitchen, staring at the table. Rosie slept in the bedroom, toy dog tucked under her chin. Mara's hands trembled as she poured tea she didn't want. She felt guilt pressing on her ribs. Was she worth the cost? She had 2 jobs, a tired body, and a life built from survival. Adrian had money, power, and a name that opened doors. And now he was losing things because of her. The thought made her stomach twist. She leaned forward, elbows on the table, and whispered into the quiet, "I didn't ask for this." And then, softer, "But I want it." That was the part that terrified her most. A knock came at the door. Mara froze. Her heart shot into her throat. She didn't move right away. Then she heard a familiar voice. "Mara," Adrian said quietly. "It's me." She exhaled shakily and opened the door. Adrian stood there, coat open, hair damp from the cold. He looked tired, but something about his tiredness was different now. Less empty, more alive. "I told them to stop," he said. Mara stared. "Oh," she whispered, though she knew. "The people who think they own me," Adrian replied. Mara's eyes filled. "Adrian, she began. He stepped closer. "I'm not blaming you," he said. "I'm thanking you." Mara blinked. "For what?" she asked, confused. Adrian's voice softened. "For showing me what matters," he said. "For letting me into your life instead of shutting the door." Mara swallowed hard. "I'm scared," she admitted. Adrian nodded. "I know," he said. He looked toward the hallway where Rosie slept. Then back at Mara. "I won't let them touch you," he promised. Not like a dramatic vow, like a statement of fact. Mara's breath trembled, and she stepped back slightly, letting him in. Not because she needed saving, because she was finally letting someone stay. The next few weeks didn't become easy. They became real. Adrian moved through life differently now. Not rushing, not hiding, but the world didn't like when powerful men stopped obeying the script. A small article appeared online. Not a headline, just a whisper. Tech mogul spotted with single mother and child. No names for Mara. No context, just implication. The comments were worse. People love stories as long as they didn't have to respect the people inside them. Mara found it by accident at work, scrolling while she waited for the bus. Her stomach sank as she read, "Gold digger, trap baby, he's having a midlife crisis." Poor kid. Mara's hand shook, not because she cared what strangers thought of her, because Rosie would grow up in a world where strangers felt entitled to define her. That night, Mara didn't say anything to Adrian. She tried to carry it alone, but Rosie noticed everything. At dinner, Rosie was quieter than usual. She pushed her soup around with her spoon. Adrian watched her. "Hey," he said softly. "You okay?" Rosie shrugged. Mara's chest tightened. Rosie looked down at her toy dog. "Mommy cried today," she said suddenly. Mara froze. Adrian's eyes lifted to Mara, calm but alert. Mara's throat tightened. Rosie continued, voice small. "She didn't want me to see, but I saw." Mara blinked hard. Adrian didn't speak yet. He waited, giving Rosie space. Rosie looked up at him. "Did I do something wrong?" she asked quietly. Adrian's heart clenched. "No," he said instantly. "No, sweetheart." Rosie's lips trembled. "Then why do people look at mommy like she's bad?" she whispered. Mara's breath caught. Adrian's face hardened, not at Rosie, at the world. He leaned forward slightly, lowering his voice like he was telling Rosie a secret. "Some people," he said, "feel safer when they believe the worst about others. Because if they admit goodness exists, they have to ask why they didn't choose it." Rosie stared, trying to understand. Mara's eyes filled. Adrian looked at Mara. "We're not doing this alone," he said quietly. Mara swallowed. "We don't have a choice," she whispered. Adrian nodded once. "No," he said, "we don't." Then he added, voice steady, "So we do it together." The next morning, Mara woke up to find a small note on the counter. No flowers, no grand romantic gesture, just a simple sentence written in neat handwriting. "Drop Rosie at the cafe after school. I'll be there." Mara stared at it. Then she looked toward the bedroom where Rosie slept. For years, Mara had carried the entire world by herself. And now, someone was quietly taking weight off her hands. It felt unfamiliar. It felt dangerous. It felt like hope. At the cafe that afternoon, Adrian didn't sit at his table by the window. He stood near the counter, sleeves rolled up, speaking with the owner. The older man nodded slowly, eyebrows raised in surprise. Rosie entered first, backpack bouncing. She stopped when she saw Adrian standing instead of sitting. "Mr. Adrian," she said, running over. Adrian crouched and smiled. "Hey," he said, "want to help me with something?" Rosie's eyes widened. "What?" she asked. Adrian gestured toward the back room. "I'm starting something," he said. "A little project." Rosie tilted her head. "A secret?" she whispered. Adrian smiled. "Not a secret," he said. "A choice." In the back room, Adrian had set up a long table. On it, a toolbox, a sewing kit, a small lamp, and a cardboard box filled with broken toys. Rosie gasped. "Why are there so many?" she asked. Adrian's voice softened. "Because there are a lot of kids," he said, "who have something they can't replace." Rosie stared at the toys. A doll missing an arm, a teddy bear with a torn belly, a plastic robot with a cracked chest, a music box that wouldn't play. Rosie touched one carefully. "Are we fixing them?" she asked. Adrian nodded. "Yeah, he said. "We're going to fix them." Rosie looked up at him, eyes shining. "Like my dog," she whispered. Adrian smiled. "Like your dog," he agreed. Mara arrived 20 minutes later, breathless from work. When she stepped into the cafe, she saw Rosie through the glass of the back room. Rosie sat on a chair too tall for her, tongue sticking out slightly in concentration, holding a needle very carefully as Adrian guided her hands. Adrian wasn't the same man who used to stare out the window like he was waiting for life to end. He looked present. Mara's throat tightened. She stood there too long, watching. Then the cafe owner walked over quietly. "He's been back there for hours," the owner said gently. "Came in early." Mara swallowed. "Why?" she asked softly. The owner shrugged. "Some men," he said, "don't know how to fix themselves. So they start with something smaller." Mara's eyes filled. She looked back at the back room, and for the first time in a long time, she felt something other than fear. She felt possibility. Word spread, not online, in real life. A mother came in holding a toy train with a broken wheel. A father came in with a stuffed rabbit that had been through too many hospital nights. A grandmother brought a music box that belonged to her late husband. Adrian didn't ask questions. He didn't ask for proof. He didn't ask for gratitude. He just fixed what he could. And when he couldn't fix something, he sat with the person and tried anyway. It became a Saturday thing. Then it became a Wednesday thing. Then Friday afternoons. The back room turned into a quiet little workshop. The sign on the door was simple, handwritten. "Fix a table, no charge." And under it, one more line. "Bring what you can't replace." Of course, not everyone liked it. A man in a suit showed up one afternoon. Not threatening, just smooth. He stood in the cafe, smiling politely at the owner. "Mr. Cole," he said when Adrian stepped out. "We should talk." Adrian's eyes narrowed. "I'm busy," he said. The man smiled as if this was cute. "You're being sentimental," he said, "and it's affecting your value." Adrian's voice was calm. "My value to who?" he asked. The man leaned closer, lowering his voice. "Investors," he said. "People who matter." Adrian stared at him for a moment. Then he said quietly, "People who matter don't threaten single mothers." The man's smile thinned. "You're making enemies," he warned. Adrian's eyes didn't move. "Good," Adrian said. "Then I'll know who they are." The man left, but the air changed. Mara felt it, like a storm building in silence. 2 nights later, Mara got a letter. Not an email, a physical letter. That's how you know someone wants you to feel it. The envelope was plain. Inside was a notice, a landlord complaint, a claim that Mara was violating a noise policy, a threat of eviction. It was ridiculous. Rosie was quiet. They didn't throw parties. They barely had people over. Mara's hands shook as she held the paper. They were trying to push her out. Not directly, not with obvious violence, with systems, with pressure. Mara sat at the kitchen table, staring. Rosie was in the living room, humming softly as she colored. Mara forced her face to stay calm, because children feel fear like weather. Adrian arrived later that night. He took one look at the paper and his face hardened. "They're escalating," he said. Mara's voice cracked. "I can't," she began. Adrian raised a hand gently. "Yes, you can," he said. "But you shouldn't have to." He reached for his phone. "I'll handle it," he said. Mara grabbed his wrist. "Please," she whispered, "don't destroy your life for us." Adrian looked at her for a long moment. Then he said something Mara didn't expect. "I'm not destroying my life," he said quietly. I'm finally living one. Mara's eyes filled. Adrian squeezed her hand. We're moving you, he said. Mara froze. No, she whispered instantly. I can't just. Adrian shook his head. Not into a penthouse, he said quickly, reading her fear. Not into a world that will swallow you. He paused. A house, he said. Quiet, safe, close to the cafe, close to Rosie's school. Mara stared. That's too much, she whispered. Adrian's voice softened. It's not, he said. It's a door that closes right. Mara's breath caught at the familiar phrasing. Adrian added gently, and I'm not putting it in my name. Mara blinked. What? She whispered. Adrian looked down briefly, then back up. Because this isn't charity, he said. This is building. Mara's hands trembled. Rosie looked up from the living room. Are we getting a new house? She asked, eyes wide. Mara's throat tightened. Adrian crouched to Rosie's level. If your mom wants, he said carefully, but only if she wants. Rosie looked at Mara. Mara stared at her daughter. Then she looked at Adrian, and in his face, she didn't see control. She saw respect. Mara swallowed hard. Then she nodded once. Not because she needed saving, because she was choosing safety. The house wasn't big. That was the point. It didn't scream wealth. It didn't feel like a trap disguised as comfort. It was small, warm, and ordinary. A little porch, a living room with a fireplace that worked, a kitchen with cabinets that closed quietly. The first time Mara stepped inside, she didn't smile. She froze. Because sometimes when you've lived in survival too long, comfort feels like a lie. Rosie ran ahead, boots thumping. There's a staircase, she shouted. Mara set her bag down slowly. Adrian stood behind her, hands open, letting her move at her own pace. You don't have to decide today, he said quietly. Mara turned to face him. Her eyes were wet. I don't know how to live in something that doesn't feel temporary, she whispered. Adrian's expression softened. Then we learn, he said. Together. That word again. Together. Mara nodded shakily. And for the first time, she stepped deeper into a future she didn't have to drag alone. They moved on a Sunday, not with fancy movers. Just a rented van and a few boxes. Adrian carried the heavy things. Mara carried the fragile ones. Rosie carried her toy dog like it was the most important box of all. The cafe owner came by with a casserole dish. No questions, just food. A neighbor waved from across the street. A little boy on a bike stared at Adrian, recognized him, then looked away shyly. Life didn't change with fireworks. It changed with small kindness. But enemies don't stop just because you change addresses. A week later, a different letter arrived. This one wasn't about eviction. It was worse. A legal notice about child welfare concerns. Mara's blood ran cold. It was a tactic, a cruel one. The accusation was vague. Unusual male presence, unstable housing, financial insecurity. They were trying to paint Mara like a risk. They were trying to take Rosie. Mara sank onto the kitchen floor, shaking. Adrian found her there. He didn't ask what happened. He just sat beside her, silent. Mara held the paper out with trembling hands. Adrian read it once, then again. His face didn't explode. It went still, the calm you see right before storm breaks. They won't touch her, he said quietly. Mara sobbed once, sharp and broken. I can't lose her, she whispered. Adrian's voice cracked just slightly. You won't, he said. Then he stood, and in that moment, Mara realized something. Adrian wasn't only fighting for them. He was fighting for the child he used to be, the one who never felt protected. The lawyer handled it fast. Receipts, evidence, security footage, witness statements from the cafe community. The complaint collapsed within days. But the fear didn't. Mara slept lightly. Rosie began waking up at night again. One night, Rosie crept into Mara's room and climbed into bed without a word. Mara held her tight, whispering, "It's okay, baby." Rosie's voice was muffled against her mother's shirt. "Are they taking you away?" she asked. Mara's throat tightened. "No," she lied softly, because she didn't know. Adrian stood in the doorway, watching. He didn't interrupt. But after Rosie fell asleep, he spoke quietly. "We're not letting fear live in this house," he said. Mara looked up at him, exhausted. "Ow," she whispered. Adrian's eyes were steady. "Light," he said simply. The next day, he installed motion lights outside. Not blinding, just enough. New locks. A security system that didn't beep loudly like panic. Just quiet protection. And then something else. He started walking Rosie to school. Not every day, when he could. At first, Mara resisted. "It'll bring attention," she warned. Adrian nodded. "Let it," he said. Mara stared. Adrian's voice softened. "I spent my life hiding," he said, "and it didn't save me." Mara's eyes filled, so she let him. The first time Adrian walked Rosie to school, Rosie held his hand like it had always been hers to hold. She chatted the whole way. About her teacher, about her crayons, about a kid who ate glue in class. Adrian listened like it mattered, because it did. At the school gate, other parents watched. Some smiled politely. Some stared. Mara felt her stomach knot when she arrived later to pick Rosie up. She could feel the whispers. And then one mother approached, face tight with judgment. "So," the woman said, voice sweet like poison, "he's your boyfriend now?" Mara's chest tightened. Adrian wasn't there. It was just her. For a moment, Mara felt the old instinct. Lower your eyes, keep moving, don't make waves. But then she thought of Rosie asking, "Did I do something wrong?" Mara lifted her chin. "No," she said calmly. "He's my family." The woman blinked, caught off guard. Mara's voice stayed steady. "And if you're going to talk about us, at least do it in front of me." The woman's mouth opened, then closed. Mara turned and walked away. Her hands were shaking, but she didn't feel small. She felt standing. That night, Adrian found Mara on the porch, wrapped in a blanket, staring at the street lights. He sat beside her without speaking. After a long silence, Mara whispered, "I hate that I'm always afraid." Adrian looked ahead. "I hate that the world punishes softness," he said quietly. Mara's eyes filled. "I don't want Rosie to grow up thinking love is something people can use against you," she whispered. Adrian turned slightly. "Then we show her something else," he said. Mara looked at him. Adrian's voice softened. "We show her that love is the reason you fight," he said, "not the reason you run." Mara swallowed hard. Then she nodded once. The fix-it table grew. It wasn't just toys anymore. It became small repairs for the neighborhood. A torn backpack, a broken zipper, a heater that needed a simple part, a stroller wheel that wouldn't lock. Adrian didn't do it for applause. He did it because helping made his chest feel less empty. The cafe became a place where people came not just to drink coffee, but to feel human again, and that scared the people who liked Adrian isolated. Because a man who belongs to others is harder to control. One afternoon, Adrian received a message. Not from the board, from his uncle. Short, cold. You're embarrassing the family. Adrian stared at it for a long time. Then he deleted it. Mara noticed. Everything okay? She asked carefully. Adrian exhaled. My family thinks love is a weakness, he said. Mara's eyes softened. And what do you think? She asked quietly. Adrian looked at Rosie, who was on the floor fixing a teddy bear seam with concentration. Adrian's voice was almost a whisper. I think love is the first thing that ever made me brave. Mara's breath caught. She reached for his hand. He didn't flinch. He held on. January came with hard cold, the kind that makes the world feel sharp. But inside the little house, warmth grew slowly. Not perfect, not effortless, but real. Mara started sleeping deeper. Rosie started laughing louder. Adrian started doing something he hadn't done in years. He started dreaming, not about money, about ordinary things. A garden, a bookshelf, a Sunday breakfast where nobody was afraid. And that was when the world tried one last time to punish him. A reporter showed up at the cafe. Not a screaming one, a quiet one, the dangerous kind. She ordered coffee and sat near the fix-it table, watching. Adrian noticed her immediately. He had lived too long under lenses not to recognize the shape of attention. When she finally approached, she smiled politely. Mr. Cole, she said, mind if I ask a few questions? Adrian didn't smile. A mind, he said. She laughed softly, like he was joking. It's a human interest piece, she said. People love stories like this. Adrian's eyes were cold. This isn't a story, he said. It's a life. The reporter's smile tightened. Then give him the life, she said. Tell them how you saved the single mother and her child. Mara, who just walked in, froze. Adrian's expression darkened. I didn't save anyone, he said. The reporter tilted her head. Come on, she said softly. It's romantic. It sells. Adrian leaned closer, voice low. If you write one word about them, he said, I'll sue your outlet into a crater. The reporter blinked. You can't stop the narrative, she said. Adrian's eyes didn't move. No, he said calmly, but I can stop you. The reporter left, but the fear remained. Mara's hand shook. I don't want Rosie on the internet, she whispered. Adrian nodded. She won't be, he said. Mara looked at him, eyes wet. What if they never stop, she whispered. Adrian's voice was quiet but firm. Then we don't stop either, he said. Adrian made a decision, a big one. He didn't just step down. He made it official. He sold off what was still tied to the people who threatened Mara. He took the money, and instead of building another tower, he built something smaller, a foundation, not a flashy charity, a practical one, Cole Community Repair and Support, a place where people could bring broken things and get help without shame. Not just toys, clothes, small appliances, wheelchairs, coats, and a corner for legal support for families getting targeted. Mara stared at him when he told her. Why are you doing all this? She whispered. Adrian looked tired, but not empty. Because, he said slowly, someone should have done it for my mother. Mara's breath caught. Adrian didn't speak often about his mother. He swallowed. She worked herself sick, he said quietly. And people smiled at her while they watched her drown. Mara's eyes filled. Adrian's voice cracked slightly. I can't change what happened to her, he said, but I can change what happens now. Mara reached for his hand, trembling. You're not alone anymore, she whispered. Adrian looked at her, and for once, he didn't look away. "I know," he said. "The first day the repair center opened, people came. Not because Adrian was famous, because word travels fast when something is genuinely kind." A teenager brought a jacket with a torn sleeve. A man brought a space heater that stopped working. A woman brought a doll her daughter had slept with for 6 years. Rosie wore a little apron that was too big. She took her job seriously. "Put it here," she told people, pointing to the table. "Mr. Adrian will look." Adrian smiled every time. Mara watched from the corner, heart full and terrified at the same time, because happiness always felt like it came with a price. But then she saw something that made her chest loosen. An older woman approached Mara hesitantly. "I just wanted to say," the woman began, "I've seen you at the school. You're doing a good job." Mara blinked. No one had said that to her in years. Mara's voice trembled. "Thank you," she whispered. The woman smiled warmly. "We're glad you're here," she said. And just like that, Mara felt something unfamiliar. Belonging. Spring came slowly. The snow melted. The streets softened. The cafe windows didn't fog as much. Rosi grutayir. Adrian changed too. Not dramatically, but in ways that mattered. He started laughing sometimes. Not a polite laugh. A real one. He started wearing softer clothes. Less armor. Mara started allowing herself to plan. Not just survive. She enrolled in a night course, something small, practical, a certification to move into a better job. Adrian offered to pay. Mara refused. Adrian didn't argue. He asked, "How can I support you without taking your strength away?" Mara stared at him, surprised. No one had ever asked her that. So she answered honestly. "Watch Rosie on Tuesdays," she said. Adrian nodded. "Done," he said. And that was how love looked in their house. Not grand speeches, just showing up. But healing always has one last test. Adrian's uncle came in person, not to the house, to the repair center. He walked in like he owned the air. Men like him always did. He looked around with thin disgust. "This is what you've become," he said. Adrian didn't look surprised. He wiped his hands slowly on a cloth. "What do you want?" Adrian asked calmly. The uncle's eyes flicked to Rosie. Rosie stood behind the counter, coloring. The uncle's lip curled slightly. "This is humiliating," he said. The coal name reduced to sewing stuffed animals. Adrian's eyes sharpened. "Leave," he said. The uncle smiled coldly. "You think you can cut yourself off and still stay safe?" he asked. "You think people won't come for what you still have?" Adrian's voice was low. "I don't have what you think I have," he said. The uncle stepped closer. "You're making yourself vulnerable," he hissed. Adrian's expression didn't change. "I've been vulnerable my whole life," he said quietly. "I just pretended it was power." The uncle's eyes narrowed. Then he said the cruel thing. "You're attached to that child," he said softly. "That's your weakness." Adrian moved fast, not violent, just final. He stepped between the uncle and Rosie. His voice dropped deadly calm. "You will not speak about her," he said. "Not in this room. Not anywhere." The uncle smirked. "What will you do?" he asked. "Fix my door." Adrian's eyes were ice. "I will destroy you," Adrian said quietly. "And I will do it legally. Slowly. Publicly." The uncle's smirk faded. He stared at Adrian, suddenly understanding. This wasn't a boy desperate for approval anymore. This was a man who had chosen love over fear. And that made him dangerous. The uncle backed away. He left without another word. Mara had seen everything from the doorway. She walked up to Adrian after, trembling. "You okay?" she whispered. Adrian swallowed. "No," he admitted, "but I'm here." Mara nodded, and she stayed. Summer came. The world looked brighter, but their story didn't become perfect. Because life doesn't become perfect. It becomes lived. One night, Rosie had a nightmare. She woke up crying, clutching her stuffed dog. Mara rushed in, holding her. Rosie sobbed into her mother's shirt. "They took you away," Rosie cried, "and I couldn't find you." Mara's throat tightened. Adrian stood in the doorway, heartbreaking. He moved closer, slow, careful. Rosie saw him and reached out without thinking. Adrian sat on the edge of the bed. Rosie's voice shook. "Do people always leave?" she asked. The question wasn't just about Mara. It was about her dad, about safety, about the world. Adrian's chest tightened. He chose his words carefully, like stitching. "Some people leave," he said softly. "Not because you weren't enough, but because life can be cruel." Rosie's lips trembled. "But you're here," she whispered. Adrian nodded. "I'm here," he said. Rosie looked at him, eyes wet. "Promise?" she asked. Adrian's voice cracked. "I don't promise things lightly," he said. "But yes." Rosie clutched his hand, and for the first time, Adrian felt the weight of the word father, not as fear, but as honor. Mara watched, tears silent on her cheeks, because she realized something. Adrian wasn't replacing Rosie's dad. He was building a new kind of love around the missing space. Not to erase the loss, to hold it gently. Weeks later, Rosie's school held a small event, a family day. Mara almost didn't go, because the word family still felt like something other people got to own. But Rosie begged, so they went. The schoolyard was full of parents and kids and balloons. Mara felt her stomach twist as she watched the other families. Then Rosie grabbed both their hands. "Come," she said firmly, pulling them toward the tables. Mara looked down at Rosie. Rosie looked up and said, like it was obvious, "This is my family." Mara's breath caught. Adrian squeezed Mara's hand under the table. No words, just staying. At the event, a teacher approached Adrian. She smiled politely. "You're Rosie's?" she asked, careful. Adrian glanced at Mara, asking silently. Mara hesitated. Then she nodded. Adrian turned back to the teacher. "I'm her family," he said simply. The teacher smiled warmly. "Well," she said, "she talks about you a lot." Adrian blinked. "What does she say?" he asked. The teacher laughed. "She says you fix things," she said, "but not just toys." Adrian's throat tightened. He looked across the yard at Rosie, chasing bubbles, laughing. Mara stood beside him, watching Rosie like she was watching a miracle she didn't trust yet. Adrian whispered, "She saved me," he said. Mara looked at him, eyes wet. "No," she whispered. "She reminded you you were still human." Adrian nodded, swallowing hard. A year passed. Quietly, the repair center grew. Not huge, just steady. Mara finished her course. She got a better job, still tired but less desperate. Rosie grew older, but kept her stuffed dog. The stitches on the ear held. Sometimes Rosie would touch it absent-mindedly when she was thinking. Like a reminder, things can break and still be loved. On the anniversary of the day, Rosie first walked into the cafe. It rained. Not a storm, just gentle rain, tapping the windows like memory. Adrian sat at his usual table by the window, but he wasn't alone. Mara sat across from him, tea in hand. Rosie colored beside them, older now, hair longer, smile easier. Rosie looked up suddenly. "Mr. Adrian," she said. Adrian smiled. "Yes." Rosie held up her drawing. This time it wasn't stick figures. It was a cafe window with rain outside. A table, 3 people, a little dog with a stitched ear, and above them, in careful letters, Rosie had written, "Love fixes." Adrian stared. His throat tightened. Mara looked away, wiping a tear quickly. Rosie looked between them. "Why are you making water eyes?" she asked seriously. Adrian laughed softly. "Because," he said, voice thick. "You're right." Rosie nodded, satisfied. Then she said the line that closed the circle. "Mom says we don't throw away things with love inside them." Adrian looked at Mara. Mara's eyes were wet, but she smiled. And Adrian realized something quietly, fully. He wasn't sitting by the window anymore to punish himself. He was sitting there because that's where he met his life. Thank you for joining us on this heartfelt journey of love, healing, and quiet courage. If this story touched your heart, reminded you that kindness still exists, or gave you comfort in a hard season, please like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for more soul-stirring stories. Because somewhere out there, someone needs a reminder that broken things can be repaired, and lonely hearts can find a home again.